Hi guys, long time no see. I've been wanting to post a video for like the past month, but I've been kind of swept away doing a lot of different things for work and with research that I hope very soon I can have you guys become a part of it. The topic that I want to talk about today is something that women have been asking me about, particularly when I engage in a recent conversation on Facebook about a celebrity who died not too long ago. Her name was Yvette Wilson. She died in her late 40s from cervical cancer. And so I read the article, and just having some basic background knowledge about cervical cancer and how you get it, I kind of decided to engage in the discussion. A lot of women were talking about how they had gotten a pap smear, and a few weeks later found out they had abnormal cells in their cervix. They tried traditional, ways of removing it through the doctors, and eventually a lot of them expressed how they ended up having their cervixes removed. Some of them talked about how they had a whole hysterectomy. And I was just really happy to become a part of the conversation because what I found out was a lot of the girls on there had no knowledge or no idea that there was a strong correlation between cervical cancer and HPV. So just becoming a part of that conversation and just educating women as much as I can, I felt to be very empowering. So I definitely want to share what I know with you guys. And again, I don't know a lot. I'm just like you. Like, I'm a girl. I'm dealing with the motions of being a woman in 2016, dealing with, guys being crazy, everyone, doctors being crazy, pharmaceutical companies trying to make as much money as possible. So I'm just like you guys, going with emotions and trying to find out the best ways to protect my body. But I do have my own personal story that I thought would be cool to kind of share with you, to kind of lead you into some discussions about cervical cancer and how a lot of you women can protect yourself. Again, like, I was really shocked that so many women had no knowledge between cervical cancer and HPV. And in case you guys are wondering, HPV stands for the human papilloma virus. So feel free to do more research on that one. So, jumping into my story, my experience again. I've never had an STD or STI, and it might just be because been a complete sexual prude for most of my life. Again, I've never had unprotected sex before. Um, I've had friends who have gotten things that were easy to clear out, like you take some antibiotics or something like that, and it's gone. But with me, like, I've always been prude. I've always said I was going to stay a virgin until marriage. That never happened. However, just with those philosophies, using a condom always, protection always. And so what happened with me was when I was 19, I had taken a trip to Canada and with one of my friends, and I think we're at a bar, like a restaurant, like a part of a bar at a restaurant, and I met this guy. I'll call him Brian, okay? And Brian was super, super cool. Like, we started talking, and me being young and kind of slow, like, I'm 19 at the time, I made up this story about how I'm studying in Canada, and, like, I was trying to get a job out there, and, like, and so he was, like, really interested in me, and we were, like, kind of intrigued by each other. And, of course, none of that was true. I ended up going back to my school, like, a few days later, back to the university that I was attending, but we still remained in close contact. He would call me on a regular basis. We were developing this really cool relationship, and then we started talking about the future. Got kind of serious. And eventually, the conversation got kind of deep. He started talking about his past relationships, his past sexual experiences, and he ended up telling me that he was with a girl who he really felt like gave him an STD. He ended up going to the doctor, and they told him that he had genital warts or HPV. If you guys don't know, they're pretty much the same. Genital warts are caused by a strand of HPV. So I'm like, oh, what is this? So I started doing some research. I'm like, this is someone who we've talked about having a future together. I think I should probably know what I'm dealing with here. And so I started doing a lot of research online, and I found out that at the time there was like this new drug out called Gardasil that a lot of women were taking to prevent getting HPV. I'm like, this is so dope. Like, it was just coming out around this time, like 2008 or if it didn't just come out, it was when it was becoming really popular live, when people were talking about it. And so at the time, I think I was having issues with I was starting to have issues with my period. I was going to Planned Parenthood because I didn't have any insurance. And during a conversation with like a nurse, I told him like, yeah, I'm seeing this guy, and he recently told me that he had HPV. Like, I'm thinking about getting that Gardasil shot, but I'm not quite sure. It's long distance. He's like, oh no, you gotta get, like, she like shut everything down. He's like, no, you gotta get this shot. Like, you gotta get this shot. And so again, I didn't have insurance. I think the first shot cost like something really cheap. I know I had almost no money. I was a struggling, poor, destitute college student. So I think the shot for me at Planned Parenthood was about 20. They did on like a sliding scale or something like that. And for me, it was maybe like $20. It was really, really cheap. I know it wasn't expensive because if she said it was anything more than 50, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. I had no money. So I think it was about $20. And this was back in like 2008. So the way the shot worked back then was you got the shot in rounds. So you get the first shot, and then like a few weeks later you get the second shot, and then like months later you get the third shot. However, this is where I gotta be real with y'all. So I went and I let her give me the shot, like right there in the office. She gave me the shot. I only got one shot. Do I regret it? I don't know. What happened to me was she gave me the shot, and like immediately later, like it's injected in my arm felt like it was on fire. Like it felt like nothing I've ever experienced before. Like I'm like, what are they putting inside me? Like this hurts really, really bad. Like my whole arm felt like it was on fire. And like maybe like an hour later, it felt like my arm went numb. And so I'm a big baby when it comes to shots. I've always been afraid of them. And at this point, I'm like, what the heck did they inject me with? So I started doing some research online. And I basically found out that a lot of women, like, they'll get the shot and they'll, like, pass out. They'll faint. I saw one YouTube video of a woman, like, walking back. She could only walk backwards. She couldn't walk forward because of the shot. I'm like, this is so crazy. And this is when I was starting to have distrust in, like, pharmaceutical companies. So I allowed them to do the first shot, and I never got the second or third round. However, what I know now is that with each shot, you have some protection. So I only got the first shot, which means I'm probably like 30% protected. Like each time you get the shot, your immune system's, builds up to it, and until you're fully protected. So I only got the one shot. So like my immune system is like 30% protected from getting the HPV virus because I only got the first one. I never went back again, and this is when I was 19, and I'm 28 now. I don't know if because I had that shot, had added protection. Again, I've never had an STD. I've never had genital warts, and I've been tested before, and I have had Pap smear before. I've never had normal cells in my cervix. I don't know if that's because of the shot. I don't know if it's because I've only had protected sex, and I'm not really a high risk girl. I don't know. What I do know is there have been some research studies done on women. I think the major one was on a group of nuns. They did a study on a group of nuns over the course of several years. When I find that article, I'll definitely link it to this video. And they found that none of the nuns had any, none of them ever had cervical cancer. None of them had any exposure to HPV. And so they're really thinking that sex is really the major cause of cervical cancer, having unprotected sex. They're really leaning towards that. Let me see. What they say online is most cervical cancer is caused by a virus called the human papilloma virus, or HPV. You can get HPV by having sexual contact with someone who has it. There are many types of HPV virus. Not all types of HPV cause cervical cancer, so that's really important to know. And they also say that getting the Gardasil shot prevents up to 70% of cervical cancer cases, and it protects against 90% of genital warts, which I'm like, wow. So even if I only had the one round, that probably makes me like 50% protected against getting genital warts. I don't know. Or maybe more because maybe it had a better reaction to my immune system. Just crossing my hands and hoping for that. It's recommended that women get this shot between the ages of 13, and 26. And now the shot is available for boys. I'm really pushing this guy. I'm not big on pharma. Like, they're doing some shady stuff. But when it comes to our wellness and our health, anything that can protect us from long-term issues with our wellness, I will push that thing to the heavens. Like, I had the shot, and so I can speak from somewhat of a personal experience. Many women do, and many women have in their early 20s and teenage years. If you're under the age of 27, I definitely recommend that you get at least one shot or get the whole round if you can. I think most insurance companies cover it. You can go to Planned Parenthood like I did and get it for really cheap if you have no insurance. And also talk to your doctor if you're older, maybe in your 30s, if you've never had sex before, if you have been very low risk sexual behavior, they still may offer you the shot if you request it. It's not like a catch-all, you can't ever get the shot. They're just assuming that by the time that you're 27, that you've already been exposed to it. Like, it's so common now that it's just assuming by that age you probably already got some exposure to it, and that your immune system, has probably cleared it out by that point. Another important thing to note, is that when you go to most doctors, they don't usually test for HPV in young women, like teenagers and women in their young 20s. They do this because they're assuming you already have it. They're assuming it's already in your body. They're assuming you've already had exposure to it at some point. And so what they're doing, or what they do, is they test your cervix for abnormal cells. When you get a pap smear, all they're doing is testing your cervix for abnormal cells. You could have HPV, and it just hasn't showed up as cancer on your cervix. That's pretty much how it works. You could have it, it could be in your system, you can have a bunch of strains of it, or maybe one strain of it, but they're not really testing for that because they don't want to freak people out by telling them, yeah, you got this STD, because it's almost now becoming like a mystery virus. Why is it that when you get it as a teenager or you get it in your early 20s, by the time you're 30, you don't have it anymore? They're starting to notice that most women are able to clear it out. If they're not able to clear it out, that's when you start having the issues with cervical cancer, where it develops into cervical cancer. So they want to kind of build your immune system by giving you that Gardasil shot so that you're better able to clear it out of your system. Basically how it works. Not a doctor, but that's what they do. So unless you go to a doctor and say, I want an HPV test, I want it. Not a pap smear, because a pap smear will just check your cervix for abnormal cells, but I want an HPV. I want to know if I got this STD. Unless you directly say that, they're not going to test you, because they're going to assume you have it. The same with herpes, surprisingly. That's another one that they're starting to not test people for, because when you go to get checked for STDs, because they're assuming you already have that one too, which I think is kind of weird. I think that's really weird. I remember going my last visit to a doctor. I told him to give me every STD test, and they didn't do it for herpes or HPV. They did it for everything else, but not the common ones that everyone gets all the time. I guess they assumed that I had it, or that got exposed to it at some point, so they kind of just didn't do those. Weird. So I hope, oh God, another long video. I hope this was helpful. Please like or comment. And again, I cannot stress this enough. The best way to protect against cervical cancer is to have protected sex, to make your man get that condom on. Remember, most men don't know that they have it. A lot of men are asymptomatic. That means that they don't show signs of it, meaning they don't always get the warts on their things, which means that you could be having sex with him and he have it, and he gives you HPV, and you end up getting abnormal cells on your cervix, and it's not his fault. He just didn't know. Unless he was a really big jerk and did know and just didn't want to tell you, which is a whole other story, but most men don't know that they have it. So make them strap up and protect yourself. I cannot stress that enough. You'll also be protecting yourself from a bunch of other things too. No one wants those things. No one wants something that can kill them, and cervical cancer, unfortunately, are taking out a lot of women of color. So please, just do it. It's not a big deal. Make him do what he needs to do so that you don't end up with cervical cancer in the long run. And that's all I have to say. So please, if you have any questions, if you think I left something out, please feel free to put it in the comments and we can talk about it. Because again, whatever can help women and feel empowered and to take ownership of their wellness and health in their bodies, that's what I'm about. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye.